On November 4, 1979, in the heart of Tehran, thousands of protesters stormed the United States Embassy, breaching the gates and taking 58 American citizens hostage. The embassy's security forces surrendered, and within hours, 52 American diplomats and workers were captured by the Iranian protesters. Their demand to the U.S. government was clear: return the Shah of Iran, or face the consequences of their hostages' deaths. Amidst this chaos, 6 American diplomats managed to escape through a secret door in the embassy. For the next several days, they hid, moved, and changed their appearances, knowing that with each passing day, the risk of being caught increased. Rescuing them from Iran alive seemed like an impossible mission. But this very mission was assigned to the Central Intelligence Agency CIA of the United States. The CIA devised an elaborate plan, staging a fake Hollywood film shoot. The plan involved fake actors, a fake script, and even fabricated movie posters. However, this was no ordinary movie project. It was a CIA rescue operation codenamed Argo. The mission aimed to extract the 6 diplomats by disguising them as members of a Canadian film crew, scouting locations in Iran for a science fiction movie. By November 1979, political turmoil in Iran had reached its peak. Earlier that year, in January 1979, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Iran's longtime ruler, had fled the country under public pressure. His 38-year reign had been supported by the United States, but the Iranian people had grown increasingly frustrated with him. The Shah lived a life of luxury while most of Iran's resources were controlled by the U.S., leaving the people impoverished and resentful. The Shah's secret police, known as Savak, instilled fear in the population, suppressing any opposition. In this volatile political climate, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a religious leader, returned to Iran. He led the Islamic Revolution, transforming Iran from a monarchy to an Islamic republic in just a few weeks. This shift in power fueled anti-Western sentiment, particularly against the United States, which was seen as a corrupt Western nation supporting the Shah. Protests erupted in Tehran, with people attacking embassies, burning American flags, and chanting anti-American slogans. The anger intensified when it was revealed that the U.S. had granted the Shah asylum. On November 4, 1979, thousands of protesters gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, chanting slogans and breaching the gates. The security guards, overwhelmed by the crowd, surrendered, and 52 of the 58 American nationals inside were taken hostage. However, the protesters were unaware of a secret door at the embassy that led directly to the street. During the attack, 6 American diplomats managed to slip out through this door, but without a plan, cover, or official channels to rely on, they were in grave danger. Tehran had become a prison for foreigners. The 6 diplomats initially tried to avoid the crowds and refrain from using phones. Their faces made them easily identifiable, and any mistake could cost them their lives. They sought shelter from various embassies, but fear of retaliation from Iranian revolutionaries led to refusals. Finally, Canadian Ambassador Ken Taylor stepped in, offering them refuge at his residence despite the Canadian government's reluctance. The 6 Americans remained hidden at the ambassador's house. For the next 3 months, their presence kept a strict secret. The 6 diplomats who escaped were Robert Enders, a consular officer, Mark Layek, a vice consul, and his wife, Cora Layek, who worked in the immigration department, Joseph Stafford, a political officer, and his wife, Kathleen Stafford, who handled visa documentation, and Lee Schatz, an agricultural statistician. When the U.S. government learned of their escape, they kept the information top secret, fearing that any public announcement would endanger not only the 6 diplomats, but also the 52 hostages still in captivity. The CIA, led by expert Tony Mendez, was tasked with rescuing the 6 diplomats. Several plans were considered, including using UN trucks disguising them as locals, or evacuating them through another embassy. However, each option carried significant risks. Mendez proposed a bold and unconventional idea, creating a fake science fiction film production. The plan involved a fake film crew visiting Iran to scout locations, providing a plausible reason for their presence, and allowing them to leave legally with foreign passports. The cover story had to be intriguing enough to seem real, but not so attention-grabbing as to raise suspicions. Thus, the idea of a fake Hollywood science fiction film, Argo, was born. Mendez and his team created an entirely fabricated story about a film crew visiting Iran. complete with fake scripts, posters, and even a professional-looking office in Hollywood. Media leaks, fake interviews, and marketing materials were circulated. To make the story believable, the 6 diplomats were given fake Canadian passports, business cards, production schedules, and glossy brochures detailing the film project. Every detail was meticulously crafted to resemble a real Hollywood production. However, creating the documents was only half the challenge. The real test was training the diplomats to convincingly play their roles. Mendes conducted a crash course, teaching them how to behave like professionals in the film industry, how to answer questions, and how to exude confidence. The mission's first stage was complete. The 6 Americans were now transformed into film crew members. The next challenge was to make this story work in Tehran. After weeks of preparation, Mendes received permission to enter Iran under the guise of a Canadian film producer, scouting locations for a science fiction movie in January 1980. He arrived in Tehran as an ordinary foreign visitor, armed with legal documentation and a Canadian passport. His cover story was supported by media reports, and his entry went unnoticed. Upon arrival, Mendes contacted Canadian Ambassador Ken Taylor and arranged a meeting with the 6 diplomats. At the ambassador's residence to ensure secrecy, Mendes briefed them on how to behave at the airport, what to say to border officials, and how to handle any questions. They were repeatedly reminded to present themselves as confident, professional film crew members on a short business trip. If the plan failed, not only would the 6 Americans be captured, but the ongoing negotiations to free the 50 hostages would be jeopardized, and the Canadian embassy would face severe repercussions. The group spent the next few days preparing for their departure. Finally, the day arrived when they had to face Iranian authorities at Tehran airport. At the airport, the group, consisting of a film producer and his 6 crew members, appeared confident and relaxed, speaking English with a slight accent. The only issue was that their fake Canadian passports lacked entry stamps from Iran. Mendes knew that the new Iranian government's customs and border security were disorganized, and missing stamps were common. If questioned, their only defense would be confidence. At a checkpoint, a guard paused upon seeing the title art director on one of the passports, and another scrutinized the visas for a bit too long. Fortunately, their cover story was so convincing that no suspicions were raised. The 6 crew members acted like ordinary travelers, and the Canadian embassy was on standby to confirm their identities if needed. When the boarding announcement came, they calmly crossed the gate and boarded a Swissair flight. Once the plane left Iranian airspace, the 6 diplomats and Tony Mendes kept their emotions in check. Upon reaching Zurich, U.S. authorities took them into custody and quietly transported them back to America. No headlines were published, and no official statements were made. The entire operation remained top secret, not only for the safety of the diplomats, but also to protect Canada's involvement. The story remained classified for the next 17 years, until the CIA declassified the documents in 1997. Tony Mendes himself revealed the full story of how a fake film, a fabricated studio, and an impossible mission saved 6 lives. Meanwhile, the 52 American hostages were held for 444 days until they were finally released on January 20th, 1981, the day Ronald Reagan became U.S. President. The Shah of Iran, whose actions had sparked the crisis, died of cancer in the U.S. on July 27, 1980. The story of Argo, once confined to classified files, became a subject of interest for journalists, historians, and filmmakers worldwide. A movie was made based on the events, though it took creative liberties, emphasizing the CIA's role. In reality, the mission would not have been possible without the assistance of Canadian Ambassador Ken Taylor, who was declared a national hero in Canada and awarded a gold medal by the U.S. The Argo mission, dubbed the Canadian Caper by the media, marked the end of the U.S. Embassy in Iran, which never reopened. Canada also closed its embassy and recalled its diplomats. This remarkable operation remains a testament to ingenuity, courage, and international cooperation. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel to not miss out on top-tier analyzers of politics, and just to see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring showdowns that change how the world sees.